Hello, and welcome to another segment of Nook News. I'm here today with Jim Bunnell and Anna Dunbar of the Talking Information Center, and we're going to learn a little bit about what it's all about and what they do. Jim, welcome.
Well, thanks for having us, Beth.
You're welcome. It's an honor to have you here. We recently met at a P&G meeting, and ever since I am amazed at what the Talking Information Center does. So do you want to start and do a little bit of history on the Talking Information Center?
Would love to. In short, the TIC network's been around for almost 40 years. It'll be 40 years this June. And it started 40 years ago as a reading service for people with visual impairment and blindness in Marshfield. It was started a little after WATD started in Marshfield by Ed Perry and Ron Bersani, who was a Marshfield High School school teacher. So you fast forward that 40 years, almost 40 years, we're now a communication network reading a variety of communications like newspapers, magazines, books, health articles, by over 200 volunteers weekly, and to over 30,000 folks with disabilities around the state of Massachusetts.
Now, your particular, the Talking Information Center, are you the only people with that name? So are we only in Massachusetts?
Yeah, so we're based in Massachusetts. We're the only Talking Information Center in the world, but we are statewide, we're nationwide, and we're even worldwide with the internet. People listen to us, across the Atlantic Ocean, all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So I was doing a little research, and I loved that your slogan is turning print into sound. Mm-hmm. So was that the idea back 40 years ago, that they just wanted to be able to share with visually impaired people, or share with everybody?
Well, I think back then, yes, it was for blindness and severe or legal visual impairment. And if you have a loved one, a family member, a neighbor, somebody who is print impaired and can't read because of no vision or lack of vision, it's a whole different world 40 years ago, because a lot of information and a lot of communication came by way of print. And so it was extremely valuable for that service to be provided. Today it's just as valuable, but we really try to create unique programs that visual impaired or disabled folks who are print impaired can access through television, can access through other mediums like smartphones and that sort of thing. So the programming is very unique and connected to their livelihood of living independently and staying living independently.
Anna, you mentioned that people worldwide can listen to the TIC network. Yeah. How does that work?
Sure. So there's a lot of different ways that people can listen to us. The way that people seem to listen to us worldwide is they can listen live on our website. So people can go to ticnetwork.org, and on the top right-hand corner of the screen, there's a big Listen Live button. We also have a free smartphone app that people can download on their Apple or Android device. There's a telephone number that people can call. And we're also on a lot of different community cable channels like PAC TV. Awesome. And that we also have traditional radio receivers that we can send out to people as well.
Radio receivers, we've been talking a lot at the center. I actually find myself, now that I understand what you do, I find myself talking about what you do at least once a week, if not more. So the radio receiver piece, how does that work?
So the radio receiver, TIC, streams on what's called a subcarrier of an FM station. Okay. So we're not on a regular FM dial like 104.1 or 80, all those different FM stations. Okay. So this receivers that we have are tuned specifically to our station. So when you turn it on, you're just listening to TIC. So if you were someone with, who is blind or visually impaired or had some sort of disability, it's very simple to use.
Okay.
So we have the radio receiver that connects to the signal. We also have Wi-Fi radio receivers, which are handy because they have a clear signal all the time. With the other one, sometimes depending on the signal strength, you might get a little static here and there. But the Wi-Fi radio receiver is always crystal clear.
So with the Wi-Fi, that's running through your computer network?
Yep.
So whatever your carrier is, that's how you would connect it?
Yep, exactly.
And how would people get them if they don't have, how would they contact you that they need a radio receiver?
We always tell people to give us a call or stop in or email us. They can call us at 781-834-4400 because everyone's unique and everyone's situation is different. So we normally talk through with people what their situation is and what the best way for them to listen is. Some people might have Wi-Fi, and I would suggest a Wi-Fi radio to them because that will give them the best signal. Some people might, they might be really tech savvy, so the app on your smartphone or the computer is a great way to listen. Some people don't have Wi-Fi and they aren't interested in learning about, smartphone devices and laptops. So then we'll see if our signal on the regular radio receiver will, reach where they're living, and we'll send them a radio that way.
Oh, so demographically if what they're going to need.
Yep, yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Good.
Yeah.
I downloaded the app to my phone, and I loved it because I wasn't able to, I wanted to listen in on one of the shows and see what it was like, and I loved it. Yeah. So it was great. The benefit of the TIC network. So do you have, statistically, do you know about how many people actually listen on a regular basis?
That's a great question. And you talk about the benefit. The benefit is kind of an intangible. We have the luxury of going out and meeting a lot of our listeners at independent living facilities, veterans' homes. I would say the number one benefit of listening to TIC is the human voice. A lot of our listeners are over the age of 65 and are experiencing one or more disabilities. The other part of their life is they live alone. So our volunteers who read at TIC come in, and there's always a human voice. So technically you can access our program in all these different mediums now: smartphones, computers, Wi-Fi, TV. But at the end of the day, it's that human voice. It's you, Anna, and I reading to somebody who's reading impaired, or print impaired, or visually impaired. And that human voice is not just the information of the program we're providing, it's another person in the room. So it's very comforting, it's very secure. And to me, we continue to encourage that within our volunteer base. So as a reading service or a communication network, we're one of the last communication networks that service these folks with disabilities that is 100% human voice. So a lot of services now are going to a computer voice. So it's a computer that reads print, like your Siri or your Alexa, and they translate the print into a computer voice. And folks really don't connect to that. They love the human voice.
Don't we all? We could sit here and talk about everything.
Right. It's your friend in the room with you.
Right.
So if you're someone who's living alone. A lot of people forget that not everyone has family to take care of them or friends to take care of them. So there are a lot of people who a lot of the time during the day are alone. So it kind of helps fill that space and that time, and it brings them information that's important to them.
Last week, I know that you had a 4-town conglomeration get together and talk about, it was a low vision group, and you were talking about, the first topic was transportation, and it aired on Mission Possible. Can you tell me how the meeting went and how it came about, why did you choose to do this, and where do you think it's going to go?
Well, actually,
I have lots of questions.
it was actually at the Plymouth Council on Aging at the time. I was a guest speaker at your low vision support group. And subsequent from that meeting, I think there was about 16 to 18 attendees.
Yep.
And those are residents of Plymouth with low to no vision. I went on, and Anna went on for probably the next year and a half, speaking to multiple low vision groups and senior groups at different council on agings all over the state. And we had an epiphany of the fact that a lot of people who could benefit from those support groups couldn't attend because they had little to no vision or some other disability, had no ride or transportation to get to the meeting, so had no way of understanding and building those friendships and benefits of the information that was going to be talked about. So I think it was 5 or 6 months ago, we kind of got together with you and 3 other towns, Kingston, Duxbury, Marshfield, and Plymouth, and we said this would be great to do a quad town low vision support group, broadcast it live so people who also couldn't attend could listen in live and call in with questions. And after speaking to you and a lot of the attendees planning the meeting, transportation obviously was the number one key issue. So that's how the agenda came together. And that day was well beyond our expectations. We had over 20 in attendance. We had a few call-ins. We had the director of outreach for GATRA there. We talked about Uber transportation. We talked about Lyft, the ride in Boston. So we had a lot of interaction. So our goal is to continue with these meetings every other month and to bring pertinent information that will help these folks, again, with transportation, with healthcare, any kind of real life situation they're going to benefit from.
Yeah. What do you think the participants mostly got out of it? I mean, I know there's a shared understanding that transportation is one of the most difficult things for a person with a disability and a visual impairment.
Yeah, I think beyond the information, which is really important, I'll get back to that, but I think the thing that we feel is most important and the thing that we witness a lot when we go to these low vision groups is the sense of community and camaraderie it builds for the attendees. Because I think a lot of times when someone has any sort of disability or a disease or something that makes them feel other, they tend to feel alone and isolated. And for them to be in a room with people who are going through something similar, and this is for anyone who's going through something,
Right.
It really helps build your spirits up and it makes you feel like you're not going through it alone. So for those 25 people to be in a room together, I think was so helpful for them because I don't think a lot of them had a place to go before that. And then for people who are at home who maybe couldn't make it to a meeting in any area that they live in because of transportation or accessibility or financial reasons, they're listening and thinking, wow, these people are going through what I'm going through too, and I am getting this great information about transportation as well. On the information side, I think the amount of information that was discussed and collected was really helpful to the people in attendance and the listeners. You know, even to the extent Jim was speaking to Joanne from GATRA earlier today, and one thing that came up in the meeting was that some of the people have been trying to take Uber, and a few times they've been denied because of their service dogs, which is against ADA regulations. And it's just those drivers don't know. They don't realize not everyone knows everything about the ADA and compliance and things like that. So Joanne got Jim in touch with someone from Uber, and now Jim's in a conversation with them about those compliance issues, and maybe that will help someone on a bigger level if they, reach out to all their drivers and let them know, like, hey, if someone with a service dog, you have to let them into your car. You have to, and that way those people will have transportation. They won't feel like they'll get denied because of something like that.
The issue, after talking with some of my low vision group people, it's still monetary. Like taking even a short trip, going from Plymouth to Marshfield isn't that long of a ride if you or I were just getting in the car and going 20 minutes or so. but taking an Uber would be a fairly expensive event. Was money discussed in any of the, during the talk?
Oh, yeah, yeah, it was a big topic. I'll give you 2 examples out of this meeting. One is we asked Carrie McDonald from Weymouth to co-facilitate the meeting. She's been blind since birth and has a full-time job at the Interfaith Council in Quincy, and is just a wonderful individual at working with these support groups. But when she came down to our planning meeting from Weymouth to Marshfield, which is probably 22 miles, guess how much it cost her to make that trip by cab? $85, one way. When she came back again with Uber, it was half that price. So Uber is economically or price-wise a better option. But again, you can't forget the safety and security of the individual feeling safe and secure with a consistent driver and vehicle to get from point A to point B. The other individual, I think she runs your low vision group. She lives in Canton. I forget her name.
Beverly.
Beverly.
Yeah.
So our meeting was on a Wednesday, and we go, Beverly, how did you get here today? She left on Tuesday. She left on Tuesday. She took I think an Uber or a cab to the train station, took the train from Canton to wherever it ended,
Kingston? Yep.
then had to take another ride, a cab ride to a friend's house,
Right.
okay, to be there the night before, to stay over, to be to our meeting the next morning. Then the next morning took the Gatra, which didn't bring them all the way to our studios, so they brought them to the Roach Brothers supermarket, and then we had her call us, and Anna went over and drove and picked them up at Roach Brothers to get there. One way, day and a half. So we are very sensitive to that, as everyone is, and we're just looking for creative, alternative ways that folks with disabilities can get from point A to point B. Doctor's appointments, supermarket, you know, these support groups, anything that's going to make them healthier and to remain living independently.
So really what we're learning is we have to keep breaking the barriers that have been broken and really come a long way over time, but we're still not all the way there.
Absolutely.
No, you look at Meals on Wheels, which you have an extremely vibrant program in Plymouth.
We do.
And that's run by volunteers and volunteer drivers.
Yes.
So, you know, one of the ideal things would to be have a pool of volunteer drivers for folks with disabilities and low vision to drive them to medical appointments and that sort of thing. Kingston does that. Matter of fact, the folks who attended our meeting from Kingston were brought over by a volunteer driver.
So we do that also at the Plymouth Center.
Good.
But it's only medical transportation through Old Colony Planning Council if you're a volunteer. So the volunteer gets a little bit of a stipend for driving. But there was limitations to the grant that was received because the trip would have been more recreation. There wasn't a medical necessity for the trip. So as I say we, I am talking about the Plymouth Center and in the town of Plymouth are trying to come up with another way to help transport people, because in the end it still comes back to transportation and how we're going to get everybody everywhere. Because we can do it if it's recreational, and unfortunately, you know, going to be part of a live studio audience may have been considered recreational.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Our next topic, not to jump off transportation, because transportation is something that's going to be ongoing in our discussions,
I absolutely agree.
is technology. Because you think about our programs and you think of all the different generations, age groups, and what technology means or doesn't mean to them. So you look at television. Television 30 years ago, you could buy a TV, you could turn it on, and you could switch the channels between 1, 2, or 3. 3 major channels. Today, you can't do that. You need a remote control. It needs to be connected to some sort of service. So we've gone the opposite direction from a technology standpoint for elderly people and people with disabilities. So we need to work on the tools to give those folks accessibility to our programs, to television programs, whatever it may be. So we have some pretty unique people who have organizations that work with the tools of the trade for people with disabilities. It could be magnifiers, it could be talking remotes, it could be how to set up a Siri or an Alexa for a person at home so they could just say, play me the Talking Information Center radio network. So we already have that on our end ready. We just need to teach people how to use it. Yeah.
So we've kind of gone full circle. We've
Yeah.
talked about everything, but with the Talking Information Center, so I know you provide programming 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
What do they read? What do they talk about?
Kind of like, what don't we read? What don't we cover? So we read, every morning we read 3 newspapers live, the Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe, and the Boston Herald. Then we read the New York Times, New York Magazine, the Smithsonian, Time Magazine, a lot of different magazines and publications.
Okay.
And then we have other programs. We have short stories. People come in and read fiction and nonfiction. We have a show called Cooking in the Dark, which is hosted by a blind chef who kind of teaches people the best practices of cooking. If you have a visual impairment, different tools and technologies that you can use. John has his show Mission Possible, in which he kind of interviews people doing good work in the community, like-minded organizations like TIC. And then in the morning, John also does a show called AM Update, in which he kind of goes over everything you could possibly need to know if you're getting up and starting your day, including the headlines of the newspapers for the day. He goes over public transportation disruptions. So if you do take
Really
public transportation,
important.
how would you know that the escalator at platform 3 on such and such line is broken down? So he kind of goes through all that information. So we cover a whole range of information for people, from education information all the way to entertainment information too.
Awesome. Yeah. Actually, I was flipping through the schedule, and you do yoga.
Yeah. We have a volunteer who comes in and she teaches by narration a chair yoga class for our listeners.
I was floored. In fact, I've encouraged a few people to, I had to say, well, are you an early riser? Because I do remember it was like 5:30 in the morning, and but I was very encouraging to
Well, the great
share
thing
with
is
that.
all of our programming also gets archived on our website. So if someone did have access to our website, they can go under programs, archive page, and they can find everything gets archived for up to 4 weeks. So if you missed the Wall Street Journal this morning, but you want to hear it when you got home from work, you can listen to it.
Does it go archived immediately, like same
Yeah, it's
day?
about 20 minutes after it airs, it
Okay.
goes up there. So it's pretty quick, which is
Okay.
nice. Yeah.
The other thing we do, Beth, which is quite unique, is we try to remotely bring programs to our listeners. For instance, around the holidays, we went down here to Plymouth and we recorded live or broadcast live the Plymouth Phil.
That's right.
And again, you forget when you're shut in and living alone and don't have transportation and can't afford a ticket during the holidays. It's wonderful to be able to experience that live concert in the comfort of your home. And we got our phone, was ringing off the hook during that time, thanking us of bringing them such beautiful music to their homes.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
You also do I'm not sure if it's still happening, but you did a live theater radio.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to explain that.
Oh yeah,
part.
yep. It's the TAC radio and podcast players. We started it last June, and the concept was to just go for the summer months, June, July, and August. But it was such a big hit that we do them once a month now. It's the last Thursday of every month. This month it's Thursday, April 26th. So we have volunteers who come in and they perform live radio theater for our listeners. So this month it's Strangers on a Train, I believe.
And what time would people listen in for this show?
If they can tune in at 7 p.m. What we're doing now is we're hosting an open mic night at TIC before they perform.
Oh my
Because
God.
you can come and you can sit in the audience for the plays as well, or you can be at home listening to them. But if you want to come be a part of it, you can do that. And from 5 to 6:30, you can participate in open mic night too.
Wow.
So we have volunteers and listener volunteers who come in
Coming
and
together.
perform in those radio plays and perform in the open mics.
Oh my God. I think you're doing really wonderful work at the Tick Network. I think it is incredible. I think it's amazing. We will have a website up on the bottom of the screen letting people know where to go and include the phone number to get information, possibly to get a receiver or any questions so that they can get the information that they need.
Yeah.
It was wonderful to have both of you. Please keep doing the good work that you're doing. We know that you're helping the people in our community, and you know, even if it's only one person at a time, eliminating a little bit of loneliness or a little bit of isolation, we know we've done something really good to help the people in our community and in all the communities that you reach out to.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
It's a team effort. And what
Absolutely.
you're doing at your center
Absolutely.
is exactly what we want to compliment. So thank you for what you're doing as well.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me today, and that's another edition of Nook News. We'll see you again soon.